Summertime. A perfect place to play at the beach. Obviously not for me, because sometimes you get babysat if you're younger. This was one of those days, of course. One day I was playing my old console, when suddenly I heard a knock at the door. Obviously I was too slow to reach it as my parents got to it first. It was the babysitter. The babysitter was then told to watch me for about 24 hours while my mom and dad went on vacation to Florida. It wasn't until later on that I heard something from the basement. I obviously didn't know anything about that, so of course I had never touched the door. I went back to playing video games in my room when suddenly I heard my babysitter call my name. It was then dinner time. I didn't think much of it, since it was usual for this time of day. I looked then at the clock and realized that it was 5 o'clock p.m. I then went back to my room after finishing, and continued. I then heard this big cracking sound coming from the basement. I was honestly stunned at the time, because it was so late. I obviously didn't want to go down there since it was so dark, and we didn't have flashlights at the time. But I faced my fears and went towards the door. I slowly creaked it open, but it was no use as the door creaked loudly as it could. I didn't see anything but darkness down those stairs. Again, I was frightened at the time, but I faced my fears and walked down the stairs. I couldn't find a light switch, so I just had to feel my way around, until I reached the bottom of the stairs and saw another metal door. I didn't remember being here, or remember the door being there, as I never went into the basement usually, other than to do laundry, of course, which is now my responsibility since I'm 13. I braced myself as I slowly creaked the door open, and saw a workspace. I didn't think much of it, however, as it was pretty late, and I was probably about to go to bed, with my babysitter calling me from upstairs. I, of course, had to go upstairs. But this isn't the end, however. The next morning, I woke up to, again, cracking sounds from the basement. I was too afraid to go conquer that fear of mine, and just stuck to trying to sleep in my bed. But obviously, it didn't work, as the sound kept getting louder. It reached my door, banging furiously. "Go away!" I shouted, but it was, of course, not opportunital, as that thing came into the room. It was so pitch black that I couldn't make out what it was, but it looked like some type of shadow wolf thing with white pupils and sharp teeth, as it came closer to me, and closer, and closer. It got so close that we were nose to nose with each other. "What do you want?" I whispered. It didn't say anything, as it just growled furiously, and didn't really do anything. I then woke up in sweat, realizing that it was a dream, and looking at the clock that it was 2 a.m. in the morning. I have to go back to sleep, I thought to myself for a moment, as I once again heard cracking from the basement. "Oh God, I hope that isn't what I saw in my dream," I thought, but obviously my thoughts didn't really think about what they could become. I didn't prepare myself mentally as I walked towards the basement door. Surprisingly, it was already open. Did my babysitter do something to this? Obviously, I wasn't thinking about going down there, but my thoughts arose and I went down. As soon as I reached bottom floor, I noticed that the metal door from before was open again from last night. I prepared myself as I stepped through the doorway into the basement itself. I then saw a desk with nothing but wrenches on it that had been strewn about on the floor. Broken. I didn't think that was the cracking sound, as I didn't think as better as I did, but I continued on searching. I later found a box taped to the wall with a sticky note patched to it. It was in very, very little writing, so I couldn't really make out what it said, but I looked closer and realized that it said, "Your life is now at stake." I didn't make much of it since it didn't really make sense, but I then turned around and I saw that thing from before. In the dream, it was there, the wolf, looking at me with those white pupils, those tiny white pupils and sharp teeth. It stared at me for what felt like an eternity, but it just growled, didn't say anything. After a few moments, it started to speak something. It was very much mumbling, but I thought I could hear the words, "Run." I then started to run for the door as the thing grew furious and started lunging at me. I then shut the metal door behind me, making the thing hit face first on the wall, which actually didn't make sense as it's supposed to hit the door, but whatever. I ran up the stairs in fear and shut the door behind me. I didn't know what was going on, but I had no time to lose as I ran out the front door screaming for help. I then realized that I had to call 911 since most of my neighbors went out of town for the day. I didn't really want to go back into the house and decided to wait it out. I didn't have any food or water with me, so it was hard to survive. After a while, it seemed very quiet, and it had been at least an hour since that thing chased me. I then decided to go back into the house, not knowing that the thing was gone. It was gone. It's vanished. It's not there anymore, I whispered. I didn't think that it was gone, but turns out that it was still there. Somewhere in that house, it's still there. I didn't know where the babysitter was, but I didn't think much about it. I grabbed the phone and called 911. A few minutes later, they arrived and told them everything. They searched the basement, but didn't find anything, of course. When my parents came back home, I again told them everything. We decided to move to London. I've never stayed the same since, as we are now living in an apartment at the time. But I know that thing, I will never forget that wolf. That thing still haunts me to this day, and I can still feel its eyes on me. But as a matter of fact,